sôi với mức giá cực kỳ ưu đãi như đăng ký brand với USBTO, tuần theo link thêm, tuần chơi cao, logistics và warehouse. Xem hình thông tin chi tiết dưới phần mô tả nhé.
So this training video is going to discuss some more advanced bid optimization topics, specifically on the new Adtactix Autopilot and kind of how it interacts with the bid override table. So the bid override table is another way within Adtactix to kind of manage your bids and campaigns, targets, portfolios, stuff like that. So there is a kind of new way that you can use both of these in combination, and I'm going to show you kind of my favorite way so far and give you some ideas on ways you can set up the tool. There's obviously probably infinite different ways depending on how you have your Amazon account and PPC campaign manager structured, if you're using portfolios, if you're using just campaigns, a lot of different ways to do this. So I'm just going to show you a few examples and you can kind of adapt it to your scenario. So right now I like to use Autopilot. It's kind of my one central source for managing my bids. It really gives you full flexibility to set up customized rules, and then with the exception of if you want to manage placement percentages or your campaign budgets, you can go ahead and use the bid override table to still do that. So in this example, I'm going to show you how to kind of tie the two together, as well as set up some customized rule schemes kind of for different scenarios if you want to segment things out. So anyway, to help do this, I'm going to kind of use a couple examples. I had a question here in the Facebook group and then a couple here via email. So I'm going to answer those first and then kind of along the way show you what I like to do. So Nathan, he asks about his current setup. Looks like he has one campaign for exact match, one campaign for ASIN targets, and then one campaign for some sponsored brand video stuff. So he's used to using the Apex formula in the bid override table, the BOT, that stands for bid override table. So he's basically got on the bid override table, if I come over here, you can see I've got all of these campaigns that are purple. These are called campaign level overrides, basically just the campaign name here. And then you set the override to the word campaign. You see I've also got a target level override down here at the bottom. So he's basically using these columns right here and the bid input settings. So you can see I've got, for my account level row, I've got some bid input settings like 5 cents low bid, $2 max bid, some different ACoS thresholds. You've got some different click related and non-converting target related parameters. If I wanted to optimize all of these campaigns and this target using these same parameters, I could very easily drag this down. And then to manage these, you would end up using this method too. And optimize bids, you can kind of toggle between any ad type, and then there's essentially 4 different formulas that are pre-programmed in with the bid override table. He's using the Apex formula, but with that button there, basically you're using the bid override table to manage your bids. The Autopilot is a completely different way to accomplish the same thing. And what's nice about the Autopilot is you can actually replicate this exact type of formula and layered kind of bid optimization scheme, as well as you can use campaign overrides, target overrides, portfolio overrides. So that's why I like the Autopilot more. It's a lot more flexible, and I could in addition add kind of more variables even in between these, if you will. So the main difference and kind of concept to understand between the bid override table and the Autopilot is the bid override table's got kind of a horizontal bid formula layout, where the Autopilot is more vertical. So we're accomplishing the same thing in this example. Let's see, right here. So this is a very similar structured formula. Basically, you've got some non-converting target parameters. So up bid any low impression targets. You're basically saying any targets that have less than 300 impressions and have 0 orders, I want to up the bid by a fixed increment of 5 cents. Bleeders, so if I've got a lot of clicks, in this case more or equal to 15 clicks with 0 orders, I want to decrease my bid based on the CPC of that target by 25 cents. Upbid low clicks with orders. So these are ones that are getting conversions right away with really low clicks, so less than 10 clicks with orders. I'm going to up my bid 25 cents, and that's off the initial bid or the original bid as opposed to the CPC. Quick up bid, low ACoS targets. This is a parameter in the Apex formula. You're basically saying any target that has, in this case, greater or equal to 10 clicks. And this parameter is actually not in the Apex formula. So that's why I like, this method even more, is because I can even more detailed refine it based on a click parameter in this case. But anything with orders and then less than or equal to 15% ACoS, I want to really up the bid quickly to give it more room to move. So I'm going to increase it by 25% off the CPC in this case. And then don't change good ACoS targets. So this is basically a way to say, hey, if I've got any targets within 15 to 30% ACoS, greater or equal to 10 clicks with orders, I want to just keep the bid the exact same. So that's 0 bid change. I could have very easily just not had this rule and it would have fallen up here in the no rule target count, but I like to kind of account for all of the targets. It just helps me make sure I've got everything kind of thought through. All right, and then finally, the kind of ratio-based formula in the Apex formula that optimizes any targets that are performing poorly. You're saying anything with greater than 30% ACoS, greater or equal to 10 clicks, has a sale at least, and then my target ACoS in this case I want to have is 30%. So it's going to take anything over it's going to take anything over 30%, and it's going to reduce that bid based on this optimization formula. I could have easily chosen another one of these that helps accomplish similar things. It just kind of calculates out the different value, but the Apex formula uses this one here. And then the Apex formula, there's actually a CPC mode. So there's a little checkbox if you look up here, CPC mode versus the original bid mode. You can accomplish that same thing if you choose, instead of the multiplied by the CPC, you multiply it by the bid. So that's what this one is right here. So it's just kind of a ratio calculation of what you want your ACoS to be versus what it currently is, and then either multiply that by the factor of the bid or the CPC. Revenue per click times target ACoS, it's a very popular one in a lot of the SaaS tools, so you can use that. This one here is kind of an expanded version of that has another factor applied. So you can kind of test them all out, see what you like. But anyway, this is an example of how you would lay that kind of formula out. And what Nate is saying is he's got these 3 campaigns that he pretty much manages everything by. What he would want to do if he'd want to use kind of the autopilot method is create this scenario here. And you can see I've applied a campaign level override. So basically you just plug in the exact same way you do it on the bid override table. Choose campaign from the override type, and then you're actually going to plug in the campaign name in this field, and then you're going to assign that to all the rows you want to associate only that campaign to. And then I could just duplicate this for my other 2 campaigns. The only difference would be, the campaign name in his case. And then that would allow me to even segment out or modify some of these parameters for each campaign, as well as if I wanted to add in maybe a couple other rows in between. You can really get detailed with that. So that's kind of the setup there. If you want to replicate kind of the Apex formula for all of your targets, it would essentially just look like this scenario up here. You just would not plug in an override value. And then you always want to make sure you do have kind of the rules on there, and then you do have a rule number assigned like I have there. And then, yeah, you're pretty well good to run it. And it'll help achieve the same thing as the bid override table using the Apex formula would. So the other question I had was related to just kind of the precedence and how the autopilot works. So I'm going to kind of explain that in just a way that shows how I like to use the autopilot and kind of how I've been testing it out. I'm not saying this is the best way. It's just kind of what I like and what I'm playing around with at the moment. So basically what I've got here is I'm going to go ahead and hide these. So you can see I've got these off in this case. So the checkbox is off. So I'm going to just click that little button there and it's going to kind of collapse it. All right. And this is actually not exactly how I'm running things right now. The way I am running them on one of my accounts is I would not have this campaign level override series here, but I'll leave it just to kind of illustrate how kind of the precedence works. So right now, basically it's saying for this campaign here, all ASINs wrist strap catch all. I've got this set of criteria and rules just for this campaign. And then because this set of rules here is under this series of rules, meaning lower in the sheet, the campaign level section up here is going to take precedence over what's beneath it. So, and then likewise, you can see I've got these 2 rows up here at the top where I've got literally 1 rule for this campaign assigned, and I've got 1 target level override assigned. These are going to take precedence over these, which are going to take precedence over these. So you've got to kind of understand that from the get-go when you're kind of building out your rule scheme, and you can kind of move the rules around if needed, or you can use kind of your rule number here to sort things. It's just, a table format. So just know that the top rules are going to run first, and then as the criteria gets met, it's going to kind of cascade down. So the way I've been running things is I would actually have these off. So I'll go ahead and just, actually let me keep them on. It'll show a little more of kind of how the precedence works. But these rules down here at the bottom are going to basically trigger for all of the remaining targets that aren't impacted by this campaign level override rule scheme or these overrides up here. And what I'm doing with these overrides is, let's say I have a series of specific targets that I always want to keep at top of search, or I always want to kind of keep a close eye on and bid high. All I'm doing is I'm saying I want to set these to a fixed bid, and then I'm using this field here to either set like a fixed override, in this case $3, or what I could even do with here is I can tie a formula to the bid override table. So say I want to optimize my placements for a series of campaigns or a series of single keyword campaign targets. There's a new feature that I don't think I've talked about in any of the other training videos, but it's actually percentage modifier rules. So if you expand this section here and you've put either campaigns or targets on the bid override table, you are going to be able to use this section. So what you can do is there's 2 formulas right now. The target ACoS tries to optimize both your top of search and your product page percentages, and then it gives you a calculated base bid. You do need, if you use that one, you do need to make sure you assign your target ACoS. So I'll show you how that works. Basically, you have the formula you want to use, and then you're just going to come up here. And because this is on the bid override table, you click here, and then under fine tuning, there's top of search placement optimizer. You can click on that. All right, and you can see it just talks about the 2 different formulas a little bit. Hit yes. All right, and then it's going to calculate your modifiers. You can see now some of these, if they're blank, it means that there's not converting data for all of the placement types needed. Likewise, you make it a 0 for the base bid. You're just going to have to ignore those. It means you don't have all of the converting data. Again, for, you've got top of search, product page, rest of search, the way the formulas work, you do need enough kind of data for each one of those fields for it to calculate accurate values. But as soon as you do have that, you can unfilter your zeros or blanks, and you can use these now for your base bid, which you would assign, in this case, the blue column. So Control-Shift-V, that puts the base bid there, and then your top of search and product page modifiers are right here. I'm sorry, the calculating values are right here, and we're going to replace them with the orange ones. So Control-Shift-V. All right, so that basically assigns these now just on the bid override table. We haven't optimized anything yet, but what you can do is change the placement modifier percentages from the bid override table, and then you can link any of these to the autopilot via either campaign level override or target level override, and then you can modify your base bid from the autopilot. So that's kind of how you can tie them together. That's one use case. There's others obviously as well, but just to kind of illustrate this, if I wanted to optimize my percentage modifiers now based on these new ones that I've assigned, I just come up to fine tuning, hit update placement modifiers, and it's going to now change each one of these campaigns to have this percentage. So I'm going to hit yes. Likewise, if I just wanted to manually, optimize or kind of modify them as well, I could do that with the same process, but it's basically going over my sponsor product sheet and just changing the percentage column here to reflect what value I had. And then the way you link the base bid is basically there's a formula hidden in this comments section. If you scroll down again, I know I'm getting this pretty advanced, but it'll be helpful to some. So here's kind of the link, and this links your target override value to the bid override table and looks up whatever's in this blue field here. So that's kind of the use case for that. There's a lot of other ways you can do this. I mean, you can pretty much pick off any of these values off the bid override table. There's custom columns here that have data in it that, if you have kind of the supplemental data, it can get populated. You can pull any of these numbers in to the autopilot and you're essentially making some of the autopilot variables and thresholds dynamic by doing what we're doing here. So you're essentially making, in this case, this 2.08 variable dynamic because it's looking up the blue column off the bid override table and plugging it in here. It becomes our new base bid. We're basically saying just set the bid for this campaign and any targets within this campaign rather to 2.08. And then we've got those modifiers that we had calculated, and those have already been changed in our example here. And then when you're ready to kind of optimize everything all at once, because we've set up these overrides, we can just click this button here. And because these are at the top of the list, they're going to get modified first. And then next is going to be this series of rules. So it's just going to be this campaign here. So say you wanted to bid a little more aggressive on this campaign, that would be reflected in some of the parameters you'd set here. Then every other target that hasn't met a criteria yet falls within these rules, and you'll see kind of the cascade here in a second when it finishes. All right, so there you go. So you can see both of these targets got modified. Again, this is a single keyword campaign, so that's why it says 1, and this is 1 target. And then you've got 4 in this one, 3, 2, 1. So this is basically showing you how many targets these are all enabled targets too. So if you have paused ones, those aren't actually getting changed. But it's showing you how many targets in each ad type, SP, SB, SD, are getting modified. And then you can very quickly go and kind of double check things if you want to look at a certain rule that you see might be kind of jumping out at you. Each tab has a bid rule column. You can go and just select that bid or the rule number. So let's say we wanted to look at that campaign level override, hit OK. All right, you can see 208, that was the value we set. And that's at row 255. So let me just go back and I'm going to hit clear all filters. All right, I'm going to scroll up just a little bit and go to the campaign level. You can see 29 on the product page, 22 on the top of search. If I go back over to the bid override table, and 22, 29, and there's our 208. So that's how they kind of got tied together. And with this setup, you're pretty much overriding the need to use the bid override table, with the exception of the bid override table is really nice for kind of managing and monitoring major keywords and campaigns that you're wanting to keep an eye on. Another good use case for the bid override table, any new campaigns that you're launching that you're testing out, use the target sniper to help track things. But you really at that point don't need to manage your bids with kind of the variables over here. It is more of kind of, I would say, a simpler way, just from just kind of a understanding, I would say. But once you set up the bid rules on the autopilot, you'll find that the autopilot's a lot more powerful and just more flexible, because you can kind of modify. There's going to be rank rules and stuff coming out here very soon. This little plus button here, we'll have a follow-up video that covers all of this, but you can manage all these parameters in the yellow columns. You're going to be able to manage organic rank parameters, search query performance, search volume. So you're going to want to get used to the autopilot, I think, because it's going to be a lot more powerful and your results are going to be a lot better long term. One other thing on the placements, because I did talk about that, there is another really slick rule that I'll just go ahead and show you. So instead of the target ACoS, if you go ahead and pick the nudge rule, there's a setting on the settings tab here where you can set the nudge amount. And I had a user that was using this strategy and showed it to me, and I started testing it. It works really well, especially if you're struggling to get top of search placement on some relevant keywords and you want a good kind of mathematical way to manage that. Basically set a nudge amount. It's going to be a fixed amount. In this case, I got it set at 10 cents, and I'll show you kind of how it works. Basically, you're going to put either campaign overrides or target level overrides on the bid override table. For the target level, you'd want typically single keyword campaign targets on here. But you know, you've got all your placement data off here that's kind of hidden with this checkbox here. So what it's going to do, it's going to calculate our base bid and our top of search modifier. The product page is going to default to 0 because for this nudge one, we're just wanting to favor top of search. So it's going to look at the CPC for both the top of search and product page, and the nudge amount, basically what it's going to do for like this example, it's going to say, all right, I'm going to nudge this one because I'm converting it, or the CPC for my product page is 160. I'm going to nudge it by 10 cents, so it's going to be 150. So that's going to become my base bid because I don't want to show up for as many product pages. And then I want to figure out the top of search modifier that gives me 10 cents more than the CPC for the top of search. So in that case, 240. So the way it works, you just change your formula there to nudge, and then you come back up here and do fine tuning top of search placement optimizer. Recalculate things so you can see any with a base bid, or here's the example I did. So 150, it dropped it to 150, and now it needs a 60% top of search modifier to get a top of search at 240. To change it, you would do the exact same way we did before. So you do the base bid, change that here, Control-Shift-V, and then I'm going to take my new placement percentages and plug them here. All right, and you do have to watch on these because you need all the data as well. You can see this one didn't have any converting targets, so you're not getting any info there. So you do have to. You can do these if you only want to do a couple of them. You can easily just copy and paste the calculations across for those. This is a quick down and dirty example. That's why I'm copying everything over in bulk, but you necessarily wouldn't want to do that. But anyway, I'm just showing you how to check kind of the bid preview in this example. So I just copied the bid overrides over. I've just pasted over my percentage modifiers. You'll see now it goes from 150 to all the way up to 240. So that 240 is based on the 60% modifier that we just calculated and based on that nudge formula. So really powerful stuff. And the autopilot again is super powerful when it comes to just customizing and wanting to work in your own formula. The question here was just to confirm, let's see, the rule number 9 overrides the setups in the bid override table. So yeah, I guess hopefully this video illustrated that you can replicate pretty much anything you can do in the bid override table. You can do on the autopilot. You just have to set up the rules one time, and it's more in kind of a vertical format. You can use these as an example on the Apex method. The iterative method is very similar. You just have a bunch of kind of ACoS range rules, and you have to kind of just, again, set those up once. You can easily copy and paste the rule schemes once you come up with them. Just make sure you number the rule number accordingly. The other suggestion I give you as you're trying to build out your own custom scheme, you might want to run the rule kind of as you're building it, because if you do mess up and you don't have one of the required inputs, like for any of these that have target ACoS with little curly brackets, if you don't have a target ACoS in here, you're going to get an error. So it's helpful when you're just getting used to it to kind of build out a rule, make sure it works, make sure you're getting a response, and then add additional rules, stuff like that. Each time you run the autopilot, you can run it as many times as you want, and it'll keep kind of, it's not adding on and kind of incrementing up your bids as you run sequential runs. It's always taking the original bid, original CPCs, kind of making adjustments, and then your new bid that's getting optimized always shows up in the red column in each of these sheets. So Anyway, hopefully this video shed some light on some additional kind of bid features and ways you can set things up. We're going to have some follow-up videos here really soon. There is another hidden feature that is live right now. It's boosted columns. So if you do have your rank data from Helium 10 as a supplemental report, let's show you that real quick. So that's here. So that's this one here. So your rank files, you got to set that up. Your historical rank files, you would just number those, or name those rather, KW underscore and then the actual ASIN. So not the word ASIN, but the ASIN value. Save those in your Adtactix new folder. Import those with your import supplemental data. If you have those in the back end, after you sync your new bulk file, if you click this button, I don't have it in this test file, but it's going to add some columns off here to the right. It's going to have your organic rank for the current day, and then I believe 5 days prior, so you can kind of get an idea of the difference. It's going to have your sponsored rank. It's going to have your search volume. It'll also, if you're importing your search query ASIN data, it'll have your search query purchases, your search query score. So those are the additional columns. We've kind of got that staged, but you can start playing around with it. But those are going to become the additional threshold columns then for these green thresholds that are coming very soon. So that's going to be on the next update. And then you'll just be able to build those into your rules and kind of expand on the functionality. And then kind of go from there. So hopefully you guys are kind of getting the power of this. It's pretty next level. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to support. If you haven't signed up or tried Adtactix yet, highly recommend you do. Just head over to fbaxl.io. There's a $1 trial. You can sign up and give things a spin and go from there, guys. So I'll see you on the next training video. Cheers.
Anh chị đang bán hàng trên Amazon. ACoS cung cấp các dịch vụ dành cho các nhà bán hàng trên Amazon với mức giá cực kỳ ưu đãi như đăng ký brand với USBTO, từ Helium 10, từ cho ACoS, logistics và warehouse. Xem hình thông tin chi tiết dưới phần mô tả nhé.